Hey folks, welcome back to the Holy Comforter Episcopal Church YouTube Bible study. I'm Jimmy Abbott, the priest here at Holy Comforter, and I have some thoughts and reflections for you on the gospel lesson for this upcoming Sunday, February 23rd. I did not do a video last week. I apologize. I was sick and not feeling up to it, but I'm back at it, healthy and hale. So, the Sunday before Ash Wednesday, we always read the story of the Transfiguration. However, this is not the Feast of the Transfiguration. That takes place on August 6th, which, ironically, providentially, sardonically, is also the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. I preached on that a couple of years ago. If you want to go back and read that sermon in my sermon archive, there might be some more for you to ponder there. So Jesus takes with him Peter, James, and John. They go up a mountain. Jesus is transfigured into dazzling array. Appearing with Jesus is Moses and Elijah, and they start talking with one another. Peter recommends that they make dwellings for the three of them. Suddenly, a cloud comes, overshadows all of them, and says, "This is my son, my beloved. Listen to him." The disciples fall down in great fear. Obviously, who wouldn't? Jesus reaches down, touches them, brings them back up, and then as they're going down the mountain says, "Don't tell anyone about what you have seen until the Son of Man has been risen from the dead." Okay, so there is a lot going on in this passage. But what I want to focus on is the fear element. So when you look at verse 6, Matthew chapter 17, verse 6, it says, "When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear." Now, obviously we have lots of fears in our lives. I think what the Christian tradition tells us is that it is proper and appropriate and right to fear God. Now, not fear as in I'm scared of God, like I'm scared of a spider, but fear as in reverence, awe, the overwhelming sense of God's power and grandeur that shrinks my own ego. I think there is proper fear in that. That I think then when we are fearing God properly, all of our other fears are put into order and put into place. So that we know that if we fear God first and foremost, then fearing spiders, fearing bankruptcy, fearing catastrophe, fearing any other sort of calamity that might befall us, all of those other things fall into their proper order. So I think it's right and appropriate that the first thing we do is to fear God. And of course, in that fear, there's also love because, again, it's not being scared, but it's about proper reverence and awe of God. I also think verse 7 is important. "But Jesus came and touched them and said, 'Get up and do not be afraid.'" I think that's also really important, that God doesn't wish to scare us, that God wishes to love us and to be with us. Even when we are scared, that here is Jesus reaching down, bringing them back up. So I want you to think about that in your own life, your own fears and anxieties. How are they ordered? What are you most afraid of? And where does the fear of God fall into that ordering? And that could be something for you to reflect on, to think about. It's also a great Lenten image. What are some ways that maybe I need to open my heart to God? What are some ways that I need to close the door on other things going on in my life? So that's something that you can think about and ponder in your own spiritual journey. I also want to say this bit, verse 9, "As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, 'Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead.'" All throughout the Gospels, we get this. Something extraordinary will happen, and Jesus will say, "Keep it quiet until after I've been risen from the dead." I think what's going on here is that he wants to make sure, that as Jesus wants to make sure, that nobody gets too excited about the little things happening before the really big thing. Because you can see that if everybody heard about the Transfiguration, they would say, "Well, let's make Jesus king right now, because he's been with Moses and Elijah." I think Jesus is saying that is important, but it will be in its proper context after you witness my death and resurrection. So I think that's a little bit of what's going on here when Jesus says, "Don't tell anyone." He doesn't want them to get too excited out of order. So it's interesting that this passage, both of the things I've talked about are about putting all of those things, our miraculous expectations of God and also our fear of God, in proper order. Again, a very Lenten image. And as I will encourage you on Ash Wednesday during the invitation to a Holy Lent, I'll ask you to go through this season with penitence, with fasting, with prayer, with reading and studying the Holy Scriptures. And I think when we really dig deeply into those parts of our spiritual life, all of those things will be ordered properly so that we know how to love God and fear God first. And so all of our other loves and other fears will fall into the proper order. I know that's a lot, and it's dense, it's theologically abstract, and it's spiritually difficult. But I want to leave that with you, especially as you begin your own Lenten journey. I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email, jimmy@holycomforterspring.org, or leave a comment here in the comment section.